India's new nuclear power that America can't match. Deep inside a research facility that few outsiders have ever seen, scientists are quietly perfecting a form of energy that could change the balance of global power for the next century, and America does not currently possess the version India is building. This is not science fiction. It is not exaggeration for the sake of a dramatic headline. For every skeptic who assumes such claims must be overstated, the underlying research record tells a far more grounded and carefully documented story, one built on decades of published science rather than speculation. It is the real, unfolding story of a nuclear program built on a resource India has in far greater abundance than almost any other nation on Earth. One that could eventually make it energy independent in a way no other major power has ever achieved. And the more the world learns about it, the more strategists in Washington are quietly forced to admit that America simply cannot match what India is building. Congressional briefings and closed-door energy policy discussions have reportedly touched on this exact gap in recent years, with officials acknowledging that reversing decades of divergent research priorities will not happen quickly, regardless of how much funding is eventually committed. This is the story of that program, why it matters so much, and why it represents one of the most underreported developments in global energy and strategic power today. By the time this story reaches its end, you will understand exactly why energy analysts, defense strategists, and scientific researchers alike now describe this quiet achievement as one of the most consequential technological developments of the entire decade. To understand why this moment matters, you first have to understand the resource at the very center of the entire story: thorium. Most nuclear power around the world runs on uranium, a resource that is scarce, difficult to source reliably, and concentrated in only a handful of countries willing to export it freely. India, largely due to geological good fortune, sits on top of one of the largest thorium reserves anywhere on the planet, found along its coastal sands in concentrations few other nations can match. For decades, this resource sat mostly unused, considered too difficult to convert into a practical fuel source using the technology available at the time. Geologists surveying India's coastal regions decades ago documented the scale of these thorium deposits in detail, yet the practical challenge of turning raw mineral sands into usable reactor fuel remained unsolved for generations afterward. But that assumption quietly began to change. Indian scientists, working patiently over several decades, began developing the specialized reactor technology needed to convert thorium into usable nuclear fuel, a technical challenge so difficult that most other nuclear powers had simply abandoned similar efforts decades earlier. Where other countries walked away from thorium research, India kept going, investing steadily in the research infrastructure, talent, and long-term funding necessary to eventually make it work. Budget documents from India's Atomic Energy Department, reviewed by independent researchers over the years, reveal a pattern of consistent, if modest, funding allocated to thorium research across multiple successive governments, regardless of broader political changes. That patience is now beginning to pay off in ways the rest of the world is only starting to fully appreciate. Engineers who spent entire careers on this specific problem describe the breakthrough not as a single dramatic moment, but as a slow accumulation of small technical victories, each one building toward a working system that finally proved the concept could succeed commercially. India has successfully developed and tested advanced thorium-based reactor designs, positioning itself as the clear global leader in a technology most other nuclear powers largely abandoned. Independent nuclear engineers who have reviewed India's published test data describe the results as genuinely credible, noting the level of technical detail included goes well beyond what would typically accompany exaggerated or purely promotional claims. This alone represents a remarkable scientific achievement, but the real significance runs much deeper than the technology itself. International scientific journals that once treated thorium reactor research as a niche academic curiosity have begun publishing a steady stream of Indian research teams, a shift in publication patterns that itself signals how seriously the field is now being taken. Stay with this story, because what this technology actually means for India's future is where the real transformation begins. Thorium-based nuclear power offers something uranium-based systems struggle to match: dramatically improved safety characteristics, reduced long-lived radioactive waste, and a fuel source India can access almost entirely on its own soil. For a nation that has spent decades importing energy resources from unstable or politically inconvenient partners abroad, domestic thorium fuel represents something close to genuine energy independence. No longer would India need to negotiate uranium supply deals dependent on the political goodwill of other nuclear exporting nations, arrangements that historically come with strings attached and diplomatic complications. Past uranium supply negotiations occasionally became entangled with broader diplomatic disputes entirely unrelated to energy policy, a frustrating pattern that thorium self-sufficiency would allow India to largely sidestep going forward. This single shift alone carries enormous strategic weight, freeing India from a vulnerability that has quietly constrained its energy policy for generations. Energy security experts note that nations dependent on imported nuclear fuel remain permanently exposed to sudden supply disruptions, price shocks, and shifting political relationships, exposures that a genuinely domestic fuel source like thorium simply eliminates from the equation entirely. But the story does not stop with energy independence alone. It extends into a realm few outside specialized defense and energy circles fully appreciate: the question of long-term strategic capability. Nations that master advanced nuclear fuel cycles gain expertise that extends far beyond civilian power generation alone, building deep technical knowledge that underpins broader strategic and scientific capability across multiple fields simultaneously. India's investment in thorium technology has quietly built exactly this kind of deep technical foundation, strengthening the country's overall nuclear engineering expertise in ways that ripple outward into other advanced technology sectors as well. This is precisely the kind of long-term capability building that other major powers, focused primarily on near-term uranium-based systems, have simply not prioritized to the same degree. Universities and research institutes across India have steadily expanded specialized nuclear engineering programs over the past 2 decades, quietly building a pipeline of skilled scientists and engineers whose expertise extends well beyond thorium reactors alone into the broader nuclear field. Now, here comes the twist that connects everything together into one undeniable pattern. America, despite its enormous existing nuclear infrastructure and decades of accumulated expertise, has not pursued large-scale thorium reactor development with anything close to the same sustained commitment India has shown. Early American research into thorium reactors actually began decades ago, showing genuine early promise before funding priorities shifted decisively toward uranium-based systems that better suited existing weapons production infrastructure at the time. That decision, made decades in the past, quietly closed off a technological pathway that America would need to rebuild largely from scratch if it wanted to seriously compete in this specific area today. India, meanwhile, never abandoned that pathway, continuing to invest steadily, even during periods when the technology seemed commercially unproven and scientifically uncertain. That patient, decades-long commitment is exactly why India now holds a genuine technological lead in an area America would need years, possibly decades, of renewed investment to meaningfully catch up in. Former officials involved in early American thorium research have occasionally spoken publicly about the difficulty of restarting a research program once its funding and specialized personnel have been redirected elsewhere for an extended period of time. This is not a claim made lightly. It reflects a genuine assessment shared increasingly openly among energy policy analysts studying global nuclear development trends closely. Peer-reviewed comparisons of national thorium research output consistently rank India's program well ahead of any other nation currently pursuing similar reactor designs at a comparable scale and level of technical maturity. Analysts who track global nuclear research point specifically to India's sustained multi-decade thorium program as one of the most significant and underappreciated strategic technology investments made by any nation in recent memory. But stay until the very end, because the implications of this achievement extend into territory that touches national security considerations as well as pure energy policy. Advanced nuclear fuel cycle expertise carries dual relevance, supporting both civilian power generation and the broader technical foundation that underpins a nation's overall strategic deterrent capability. India has consistently emphasized the peaceful, civilian-focused nature of its thorium program, and this framing reflects the genuine primary purpose behind the substantial research investment involved. Official statements from India's nuclear energy establishment have repeatedly underscored electricity generation, energy security, and reduced carbon emissions as the core motivations driving continued investment in this specific area of research. At the same time, the underlying scientific and engineering expertise required to master such an advanced fuel cycle inevitably strengthens a nation's broader nuclear engineering capability across the board. This dual relevance is precisely why strategic analysts pay such close attention to advances in this specific area, understanding civilian nuclear expertise and broader strategic capability are never entirely separate from one another. Nations that lead in advanced nuclear science generally find themselves holding genuine strategic advantages that extend well beyond simple electricity generation figures alone. Countries that export advanced reactor designs and fuel cycle expertise also tend to shape the technical standards, safety protocols, and international regulatory frameworks that the rest of the world eventually adopts, a quiet but powerful form of global influence few outside the field fully appreciate. Thorium technology therefore represents something considerably larger than a single successful energy project. It reflects a broader accumulation of advanced scientific capability that will likely pay dividends across multiple strategic dimensions for decades to come. This is precisely why the development has drawn such close and sustained attention from policy circles well beyond India's own borders. For decades, global assessments of nuclear capability focused overwhelmingly on established uranium-based powers, largely overlooking India's patient, methodical progress in an alternative fuel cycle most other nations had written off entirely. That oversight is now being corrected, one research paper, one successful reactor test, and one growing body of independently verified evidence at a time. International atomic energy organizations that once listed India's thorium program as a minor research footnote in broader global surveys have begun dedicating significantly more detailed coverage to it in their most recent annual assessments. Energy ministers and nuclear regulators from other nations have reportedly increased diplomatic engagement with Indian nuclear research institutions in recent years, seeking a clearer understanding of exactly how far the country's thorium program has actually progressed. Some of these delegations have returned home with assessments considerably more impressed and, in certain cases, considerably more concerned than their initial expectations before the visit.
Follow-up meetings and formal cooperation proposals reportedly increased noticeably in the months following several of these high-profile facility visits, a practical indicator of how seriously other nations now regard India's progress in this specific field. Whatever framing is used to describe it, one fact remains difficult to dispute. India did not achieve this position through borrowed technology or foreign partnership alone. It achieved it through sustained domestic research investment, patient scientific persistence, and a clear long-term national vision focused specifically on energy independence. For decades, the world assumed thorium-based nuclear power remained a promising but ultimately impractical technological dead end. A reasonable assumption given how many other nations had abandoned similar research efforts entirely. Textbooks and university energy courses taught for decades often described thorium reactors as an interesting theoretical concept unlikely to see practical deployment, a characterization that India's steady research progress has now quietly rendered outdated. Now, that assumption has been quietly and decisively overturned by consistent, verifiable progress that other nuclear powers are only beginning to fully reckon with. Independent scientific reviewers who once approached India's claims with professional skepticism have gradually shifted their public assessments after examining published data, test results, and peer-reviewed research emerging steadily from the country's national laboratories. This is not simply a story about reactors, fuel cycles, or energy policy. It is the story of a nation building genuine long-term strategic advantage through decades of patient investment other countries were simply unwilling to sustain. It is the story of a civilization choosing to play a longer game than its rivals, betting on a resource and a technology many others dismissed too early, and watching that patient bet begin to pay real dividends. Every generation of Indian nuclear scientists who worked on this program inherited not just research data from their predecessors, but a genuine institutional belief that the technology would eventually prove itself, a belief now finally being validated by hard results. And as more details of this program continue to emerge, one thing has become increasingly clear to every serious observer studying the global nuclear landscape closely. India is no longer simply participating in the global nuclear conversation from the sidelines. It is quietly, methodically building genuine technological leadership in an area that carries consequences reaching far beyond its own electricity grid alone. Every successful test result adds another small but meaningful data point to a growing body of evidence that continues to reshape how the rest of the world evaluates India's long-term scientific and strategic trajectory. The old assumption that nuclear leadership belonged permanently to a small handful of established powers has been permanently challenged by a nation that simply refused to abandon a difficult, decades-long research bet. And that, more than any single reactor or research announcement, is exactly why energy strategists in capitals around the world, including Washington, are now watching India's nuclear program with a level of genuine respect and quiet strategic unease they have rarely shown before. History remembers the exact moment a rising nation stops simply following established technological paths and begins charting its own. And for India's nuclear program, that moment has now unmistakably arrived. The story of this technological rise continues to unfold with each successful test and each new research milestone. And the world, whether fully prepared or not, has already begun adjusting to a future shaped in part by an energy technology India patiently chose to master, while so many others quietly walked away. Somewhere, right now, inside a quiet research facility far from international headlines, another test is being carefully prepared, another dataset is being carefully reviewed, and another small step is being taken toward a future the rest of the world is still struggling to fully comprehend.